Leisse Wilcox is a brand therapist, mindset coach, a lover of tacos, old soul on vinyl, preferably at the same time. Leisse can be found in her tiny lakefront town and her mostly pink and gold house with 3 little girls. Gratitude is wine for the soul. Go ahead, get drunk, roomie. I wanted to interview you just because, like I mentioned before, we met at camp, and I just feel like, that interaction that I had with you, and then just even small conversations that I overheard you having and continue to have with you over the weekend were just so uplifting, and I just loved what you had to say, and I love that you were like writing a self-help book at the time, and I would just love to hear about how your self-help book is going, how your brand therapy and mind coaching is going, and give it to me.
It's all going really well. That weekend was so transformative. Like it was the best feeling. We just, hung out and played outside basically with the group, like the coolest group of chicks. It was so awesome. And
I'm really hoping that wasn't like a fluke, because we're doing it again in June. And I'm like, the women who came were so good. And I'm like, I really hope that wasn't a fluke, because the women were so amazing. Hey.
And there's something so magical about Wanda Wega itself that I think it really spoke to everybody there anyway.
It's true.
But, so I left like so fired up about writing my book and like getting it all done. And what I really came away with for me was the freedom and kind of the permission to be like, yes, you can write a book. Like you have all of the talents and all of the content necessary to write a book. And then I did this thing that I think we all do. I got very, very, very practical. And I was like, but you know what? I've committed to buying this house. I'm doing this, blah, blah, blah. I'm actually going to start working full time. I'm not going to be working part-time anymore. I'm going to bump up those hours. I'm going to slay it. I am going to work my way up to being creative director at this agency that I'm working for. And only very recently have I been reminded of, nope, that is not the plan that I'm supposed to have. And it's really funny to me in the last couple of weeks that there's been, I guess, a retreat or like a course correction that I am writing the book. And it's about, I don't know, I think it's probably half done, I would say. I think it looks a little bit different than the original one that I started to write. I'm going to a conference in California next week.
Cool.
Brene Brown is the headliner, is the keynote speaker, right?
What's the conference called?
It's called the Mom 2.0 Summit.
Yeah.
And it's called Mom 2, but it's very heavily focused on influencer marketing and women in influencer marketing, specifically marketing to female audiences. So the workshops that are so beautifully timed are that there's one on like getting a book proposal together, how to publish a book in today's world. So basically I'm going to go to California next week and come home with an actual legit game plan of when this book is happening.
Oh, that's so fun.
Which feels great.
Yeah.
And then simultaneously, I'm an avid and active user of Instagram, and I'm like this far from hitting 10,000 followers. Like I keep like relentlessly checking my phone because I think I'm like 12 followers away or something. It's like, come on. That opens up a lot of content and collaboration opportunities for me. And because that is my passion.
How long is that swipe up link?
I know. Same here.
So bad.
So all of that coming together, it just feels like what I really want to do all day, every day is have these conversations. And I want to write those posts, and I want to lead the conversation and spark, like be the seed of spark for somebody that's like, oh, I've actually never thought about that before. And oh my gosh, that actually does make me feel better, or that actually really does help me in this situation. And so I had done a lot of freelance brand strategy work for clients for the last few years. And at the end of every client session, the feedback was always like, God, that felt like you were my therapist. Like I thought I was coming to you for branding, but I really feel like I've come to you for so much more than that.
Cool.
And so that's the practice that I have launched pretty recently, is to do, just to be super honest about it, that, you know, what you want in love and what you want in business and what you want from your life, it's all the same language, and we treat them as if they're so separate. But when I work with people, it could be, we could start out talking about the direction where their business is going, and it always comes back to trace, like, okay, so where does that feeling that you're not good enough come from? Let's fix that and move forward.
Yeah, I totally hear you. I know I started out as a consultant, and then like a strategy consultant, and then just very quickly so emotional, you know, it's like, okay, well, the industry, you know, at your level, you should be charging $160, but you're charging 85 right now. So start charging 160, and it's like, okay, it's like, whoa.
My business will collapse because nobody will ever hire me. And it's like,
Right. Yeah. And then you just start to very quickly realize, like, oh, these fears, that's an emotional reaction, like what's going on there. So yeah, I started to kind of get more into that coaching side of it. So yeah, I would love to hear, like, what are some things in that process of like branding? Because I have heard this before, you know, that like your brand is so much about you. Like, tell me what's important to you in that process of taking a client through, like not just looking at themselves, but like, give me, like, dive into that a little bit more for me.
So ironically, I haven't fully honed my own elevator pitch and my own dinner party spiel on this. So take this with a grain of salt.
I hear you.
Where I'm coming from is that we are all born into the world, and we live out the story that somebody else created for us. We take on the thoughts and the beliefs, and therefore the patterns of behavior that worked for somebody else in their life or didn't work for somebody else in their life. It's just what they knew because it was handed down to them, and that was handed down to them. And oh my gosh, that was all handed down for our generation like 2 wars ago. And so suddenly, like, our demographic is honest to God living, I would say most of the time, with ideologies that are actually like probably 3 generations old. So my deal is that I want people to feel free to write their own story and create their own narrative and really live their life in a way that feels honest and true and real for them.
Cool. Okay. I love that. I was actually, you were like talking about wars, like 2 wars ago. So it's Anzac Day, I think that's how you pronounce it, in Australia right now, which is like an American Memorial Day, which I don't know what the equivalent of Canada is, but it's like honoring wars and police and people who protect us. And I just like, I'm so uncomfortable with it because I feel like it's this like ethnocentrism around violence. And like, then I think, oh, am I just being totally privileged, you know, that like I'm free and I'm not respecting those who have like created this freedom for myself. But anyway, that's a whole other thing that I haven't quite like worked out into my head of like, am I okay to think this, or am I being totally disrespectful to think this? Anyway, so but I wanted to ask you, so give me an example of something where someone, and maybe like in this case it's like patriotism, something that someone has like held on to 2 wars ago, right, generations ago, a story that they're crafting for themselves, and then give me an example of like a story that is drawn from themselves that they're not being handed. Do you have like examples that you can?
Yeah, can we talk? I'm not going to use business. Let's talk about marriage.
Yeah, let's do it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So if you think about marriage, what marriage meant, and I'm even going to say just 1 generation ago, like forget World War I, let's go to the, I guess, 50s. And your partner was paramount to your success, right? You really needed a team of people to be taking care of things. I'm sure you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And basically it says like we all have needs and they're all prioritized. So if you think of a triangle, like the base is the widest, and that's like, I think safety and security is the biggest need that we have to meet. But once we have food and shelter and, you know, some general peace in our lives, we can move on to the next level of needs that we need to be met. So if you think of a really trying time when you are only focused on meeting your needs for security and safety and keeping your family alive basically on the day-to-day, you just need somebody on your side. When you fast forward to 50 years later, 60 years later, we don't have, and we are really lucky in our lives, like those basic needs for survival are totally met. Like we have this freedom to be able to move up the triangle a little bit and start looking for needs to better ourselves and to really feel like we're contributing and to even self-actualize. Suddenly we are found though that we've subscribed to this idea of the institution of marriage, that you meet one person, you're probably pretty young when you meet, you say I do, oh my God, it means forever, come hell or high water, in sickness or health, no matter who's bombing you outside, like we are sticking to this together. A lot of that comes from like old religious patterns too that are probably less common formally than they were before, because, you know, the church was such a source of community, and now I feel like we've created other ways of having community without going to one institution to find it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so now we have this old pattern that like marriage is forever, it's always forever, your partner is your partner. And hang on a second, we actually live, like our life expectancy is twice as long as it used to be. We have way more freedom than any other society that's ever come before us in our recordable history. But we're still living off this notion that like you meet somebody when you're 25 and you stay together forever. Mm-hmm. So that becomes your story, even if it isn't your story. Mm-hmm. So suddenly you find, you know, 15 years into a marriage, oh my God, you're not happy. And you've done the work and you've had the conversations and, you know, you really love each other, but there's just no like connection. An example of having the strength and the courage to write your own story is like, then why are we staying together? Mm-hmm. You know, like why? And what is the actual why of this? Is it because marriage is forever and I took a vow and because I took that vow, I now commit to you for the rest of my life? Mm-hmm. Or, you know, where does that come from? Is it like, I really believe we can see this through? Or do I believe in maybe that our lives are better served and we better give back to our families and therefore to the world by pursuing a more honest life and a more honest relationship mm-hmm. with ourselves?
Yeah, totally. I love that. That's a great example. So two things that are coming up for me there. One, I'm reminded of Gwyneth Paltrow's and Chris
Martin.
Their divorce, and they called it the conscious uncoupling. And
yeah, which was their term. That's like a legit concept, and there was a book written about it.
Yeah. But I feel like that was like the first time that term kind of was like out in like pop culture or whatever. I remember like how much they got criticized for that, but I like that resonates with me so much because I'm just like, I don't understand why we're so shocked when people split up. I'm like, I was married in 2009, so almost 10 years now. And I'm not planning on splitting up from my partner anytime soon, but I'm like, being married to him, I'm still just like shocked, like that we did actually, like we were young, you know, I was like 24 when we got married, and that we're still together, and that like, well, are we going to be married in 20 years from now? Like, I'm such a different person than I was, and so is he. Yes. That like, to expect that we're going to be the same type of people that would want to be with that same type of person in 20 years, you know what I mean? It like blows my mind.
Well, and there's a general, I think that there's a more common theory, and I wish I could remember whose it was, but the concept is that you essentially need 3 partners throughout the course of your adult life.
Wow.
And if you're really lucky, you meet that person early on and you grow together and you evolve together. So it means that you both accept that you're each growing and you're each becoming like the next iteration of yourself at each stage of your life, but you're both doing it. And so as you go, it's complementary to one another, and you share this really beautiful life that takes on many different phases. For a lot of people, that isn't the case. And that is not a fault, and that's not a blame thing. It's just like, hey, dude, I'm changing in this way, you're changing in this way, or one of us is not changing and it's getting stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
You don't commit to anything else in your life. Like even a house, for example, which is a major commitment, being like, this is my forever house. Come hell or high water, I'm staying here. I will see this through. I am sticking it out. Give me the dotted line. I will sign right there. It's just like, if I don't want to do this in 5 years,
yeah.
I don't feel like human relationships are disposable like that, but I just feel like there is nothing else that we commit to other than a parent that has that, like, those absolute bars of forever attached to it,
Yeah, totally. Did you say otherwise being a parent?
Yeah, when you commit to a parent, it's a pretty much non-refundable guarantee that you're going to stick it out.
Like you have a child, so that child is always going to be by blood your child, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like if you have an unhealthy relationship with that parent, you shouldn't have a relationship with that parent. You know what I mean? Like if you tried and you tried and you tried, and that person, that parent or that child is toxic in your life, But okay, so the other thought that I wanted to bring up, and I feel like I can just throw anything at you and you'll like take it. So have you read White Hot Truth?
I started White Hot Truth. I didn't finish it.
You didn't love it?
I didn't.
Oh, okay. I loved it. So this is one thing, and that I love that she said, and I'm curious why you didn't like it, and then I'm also curious at your reaction to this. So she's talking about a friend of hers who was in a romantic relationship. They weren't like married or anything, and but he wanted to have an open relationship and felt like it would be for the best of them for their spiritual development if they could reach that next level of opening themselves up emotionally and spiritually and sexually to other people. And so Danielle Laporte, I listened to it, so which was fun, but she was like, so talking to this friend, so she was her friend was kind of like, oh, I don't know, maybe it could. And Danielle Laporte was like, really? How does that make you feel? Really? So I feel like, so she kind of went on to say, like, not all of this like new aginess of, this is the more enlightened way, this is the more spiritual, like, will resonate with you. So I feel like there's that balance, right? Of like kind of looking at the past of like, wait, the institution of marriage, is that going to work for me? How will it work for me? And then this other bipolar side of like, have sex with anyone and it will fulfill you spiritually and emotionally. You know what I mean?
So I have experience in this. and okay, the first thing I want to say is that when new age stuff and when woo became not only popular, but like now really normalized, like we can sit here and have a conversation about syncing our menstrual cycles to the moon. And I don't feel like a crazy person. I'm just like, what up? Like, that's what I do. Why is that weird?
Yeah.
That's really good. And that's like really forward driving. I feel like that is 100% like a fourth wave of feminism, that we can have these really honest, profound conversations rooted in our femininity and in our nature and our natural roots. However, like there's this other thing that happens when stuff like this becomes popularized. Anybody can pick up the megaphone and, justify anything under the realm of, because it will move you forward spiritually. So I incidentally really do believe in the institution of marriage when both people are committed to the growth, to the work, to the partnership, to keeping intimacy alive and at the forefront of the relationship. To me, I think, I didn't know this, that I even felt like this before, but I know now that I think a lot of that relationship building absolutely involves a spiritual connection and a spiritual path that you're sharing together in some way or another to really constantly drive back that intimate connection.
Mm.
I dated somebody, and it was a polyamorous relationship, which means that I knew full on going in that he was like dating other women. I was like, great, I'm going to date other guys. Like, this is no problem. And the physical part was totally not a problem. It was like, yeah, sure, like you can be with somebody else and I can be with somebody else. And then my feelings really changed because what I couldn't share was the intimacy.
Mm.
Like, I couldn't get over the sharing of, like, I've had a bad day. I want to talk to you and connect and really feel that out. Or I've had a great day and I want to like read all the funny memes you're going to send me. I could not handle the fact that there was some other recipient somewhere getting those funny memes and somebody else who had had a kind of a crummy day who was calling him to look for support. So to me, I think it takes a very special person, or it takes two people who are on the very same part of their lives and what they want to make polyamory work and to make an open relationship work. I don't think it works for most people. I think for most people who are in a marriage and who are declaring now, like, let's open it up so that we can really become closer together, I think what they're really saying is, I am terrified of not being in this relationship anymore, and I will do whatever it takes to make it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Just the emotional energy have to carry, like in polyamory, like to have to carry that many. It's a lot. Like I don't even like close friends in my life. I can't have that many because I don't have the energy for it.
Yeah. And I think what happens, and anybody who's listening to this, if I'm overstepping, like, feel free to correct me. But I think what it brings in is a lot of structure to the relationship because, certainly in my own experience, what it did was gave me a whole new level of communication skills and relationships that I didn't have before.
Wow.
Because by necessity, there are constant check-ins. How are you feeling? How is your heart? How is your head? Like, there is a constant check-in, ebb and flow of how you're doing. And I think there, as I said, there are rules and there's a structure that becomes so clearly defined. You get very, very good at setting boundaries.
Like, you're saying structure and having the relationship with him.
Yeah, I'm saying if you're in an open relationship, like, yes, it's okay for you to be with somebody else, but you always have to tell me. So no, it's not okay to just make it happen.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
I think people create their own systems for what that means.
Right. Yeah.
But in terms of using it as a means of finding like a deeper spiritual connection, or I don't know that that's the truth. I really think, and again, this might not be a popular opinion, I really think when people are already in a marriage and they want to invite other people into it, I think it is a precursor to, like, please God, do not let this marriage end. Let's just try something else so that we don't have to go through the process of divorce.
Yeah. That's super interesting. All right, so flipping back a little bit, I love this conversation around sexuality and spirituality. But I would love to hear, like, business-wise. So are you wanting to, what's your ideal client? What kind of work are you, I mean, we talked about the work that you want to do with people, but what type of clients do you want to work with?
So my ideal client is female, probably in her 30s, who is maybe starting a business and maybe just wants to do something a little bit more. She doesn't even necessarily know what that is. What she knows is that she doesn't feel quite right.
Cool.
And she's somebody who, by all accounts and purposes, looks around as like, I should be happy, and I still feel like I'm searching for something. And ultimately what she's searching for is the relationship with herself that hasn't necessarily been cultivated in a mature, healthy, loving way.
Yeah, cool. That doesn't always have to end in what business do you have, but it's just more of like looking at the whole life of a person. So maybe you have start a garden or something like that.
And I mean, that happens a lot with, when you become a mom, everything changes, right? Like your view on life changes, and what you thought you were good at, maybe you were, maybe you weren't, and suddenly what you've always wanted to do makes more sense. You start to hear yourself speak to your children in a way that you've never necessarily spoken to yourself, or and support them in a way that maybe you didn't feel supported or you don't feel supported in. And I feel like all of that comes out in periods of transition, and it all comes out too when people are looking to start their own business or make that change, because it's so rooted, like I said, subconscious level of the mind, that we don't even know why we think these things.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I have so many thoughts on motherhood and how like it can just change you. And yeah, I definitely, like, when having my first child, I definitely went through waves of like, I want to have 10 kids, and like, this is so great, and I just want to do this full time rest of my life. And then went through a wave of like, I'm bored out of my mind. I'm like sad. And like, could we only have one child? Is that okay? And like, give me a full-time job and I'll do anything, anywhere besides being at home with my kid.
Yeah. It's a really difficult balance to strike for each person. And kids change so fast.
Yeah, right.
Those feelings change as you're growing, your kid is growing, your perspective is changing. Like it's like, oh, I can't hang on to anything.
I feel like, because I had a second one, and I feel like as soon as, and she's starting to go through this, as soon as they start to get a little bit naughty or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, that's where it like starts to get difficult for me, from when it's just like, oh, they're just sweet and they don't know any better, and you just need to be patient with them, to where they're like, they just throw their food on the ground and they know they're not supposed to, right? It's not like they're throwing peas on the ground because they're just curious, but they're just like, I don't even care. Here's my, applesauce on the ground. Pick it up, like, no. Like, that's where parenthood becomes so
and that too is that, like, I have a background in education, specifically in Montessori schools. And so a lot of my work, because my clients are, 99.9% women, a lot of parenting does come up, because what we know about parenting, in large part, we either learned from somebody who didn't know what they were doing, or we've taught ourselves along the way. And it's like, there are all kinds of ways to make this easier and to lift off the pressure. But for so many women, it's like, and I know this because I used to be one of these women, it's like, no, everybody must come to the 3-year-old's birthday party, because what will people say if they don't, and it's like, so you have to feel that or think that, like, that is not a thing and you're in control of it. But a lot of people don't know they have the permission to do their own thing.
Oh, I feel like I'd love to talk to you about motherhood all day long. Seriously, I have so many thoughts on it, and I've actually wanted to blog on it. But I feel like it's just gets such visceral reactions from women that it's really hard to talk about. Like, I feel like I'm too overly aware of all of the feelings and sensitivities that, like, I never want to hurt someone's feelings or whatever. But anyway, all right, so we just have a couple more minutes left, and I love like book recommendations, and I would really love for you, like, the things that you cited. I'm like, ooh, I need her to tell me more about that. So the New York Times piece about turning 40, tell me a little bit more about that.
I read this so long ago. I don't remember the author. I think her name starts with a C, but it was like 40 things she learned as she was turning 40. And as I said, like, I read it much earlier. I'm not 40 yet. Like, I read it a while ago, and it was so insightful to read about, you can give a shit, but what are you going to give a shit about? And how that unfolds so much differently. And for me, I was like, why would I wait till I was 40 to start adopting that mentality? Like, I'm 25 or 30, however old I was like, I'm into this state of mind. So that was for sure.
Cool. That sounds like very much a line of like reclaiming, like your life, you know, like what you were saying, and like what is the story that you're wanting to tell, and what is the things that you want to be caring
Yeah,
about.
completely.
Cool. And then attachment theory.
Yes. So attachment theory is very heady, and it is really, really valuable, particularly if you were somebody who had a rocky or unstable childhood in some way. You know, we talk about, or psychologists talk about attachment theory in parents and children, but until pretty recently, nobody ever looked at what that attachment does as an adult and how it actually affects your ability or inability to relate to other adults, and what that means in terms of your partnerships, your relationships, what your baseline level of security and attachment is, how that shapes who you attract, and what you, on a subconscious level, feel is healthy, even if it's completely unhealthy. When it feels normal to you, having come from a really messed up childhood, it like this
It's
thing is
probably not, yeah.
I know they have it on. You can listen to it as well, which I did, because it's heady and it's cerebral, and you gotta, there's some big work involved in it. But for somebody struggling to be like, oh my God, why do I keep making these decisions? That's a good place to start.
So, I mean, do you mind sharing really quick what was like an insight for you personally?
Oh yeah. You know, there's everybody relates to, you know, when they're dating differently, but sometimes we get used to that, you know, that thrill of the chase, and like, he didn't call me back, what could that mean? Maybe I should just do this. So none of that's normal, none of that is healthy. That is all really unhealthy. It all is all firmly rooted in having an insecure attachment. And when you have an insecure attachment to people, because that is what you learn from your primary caregivers as a little one, you assume that love means you will constantly chase it and that you will constantly work for it. And a normal, healthy relationship to you feels like, let me try this, let me do this, let me get your attention in this way. When really we know that a healthy, loving relationship is not about that in any way. So for me, that on a personal level, that was really interesting. It was like, spent my whole life chasing people, like begging them to love me. And I think I might be done with that now, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so interesting. I definitely want to read that. Yeah, I feel like my mom was so great. Like she loved me really, really hard.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I mean, I have to have an issue. I'm not like a perfect person, right? So I have attachment issues in some ways. I'm just curious what they are. You know, I'd love to delve into that but I don't feel like I have an insecurity around like my mom. Like my mom's love was just so good.
Well, and this isn't like a blame the parents for everything thing. This is a like, here's, you know, my Mac operating system came with this programming. Does that still run my computer the way I want it to, or could I upgrade it? Like, I chose to upgrade it. It's not a hating thing or a blaming thing. It's just
yeah, for sure. Not like a nature versus, or maybe it's more of a nature versus nurture thing.
Well, for me, it's reclaiming it. It's like, what do you want to live out? What do you want to be true for you now? Okay, well then deal with what happened in your past and move forward in a healthy way.
Totally. Oh, I love that. And then yeah, you're a badass at making money.
Yeah. Have you read her first book, You're a Badass?
I read both of them. Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is really good and like really affirmative and like moves you forward. I feel like You're a Badass at Making Money is just next level.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think especially, you know, for me as a woman, but it's also because, as I said, my client base is female. Somewhere along the line, man, we started to associate that like making money is very bad. It is really shameful. It's cool to be poor because you get this badge of honor, and it's really shameful to be wealthy, and you better hide it if you are, because nobody wants to be around a rich person. It's like, that really messes with like all of your perceptions around money, just like all of your perceptions around love. It really messes with you. And so I really like her writing because she's very anecdotal and like wraps it up with something funny and then dives into something serious again. And I just think it's really well written. And really user-friendly, really accessible,
Mm-hmm.
really, really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to go back and do, I just read it. I mean, she said to do like the workshop stuff at the end of the chapters. I never did. I need to. I want
Yes.
to. I want to. But yeah, I definitely recommend that to people. I think I think there's a lot of really great books out there around like, oh, there's like one, what's it called? It's Something Rich. And it's from like the 30s.
Oh, yes.
And they all like she references it.
Oh, yeah.
What is it?
There are a few that she has. It's like it might be The Science of Getting Rich.
Maybe it's that. Yeah.
The cool thing about what she has done, which also makes me feel good about the book that I'm writing, is that she has taken all the big works and really distilled them into something that's super user friendly. Like I've read The Law of Attraction, and it's like I got to read the same page like 16 times
Yeah.
over. I can actually absorb it. And I
Right.
read her, and I'm like, oh, I totally understand what that means.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. And it's entertaining and fun. And she uses so many different examples and stories. I love it too. I think she's great. Okay, cool. I'm gonna move on since we're running low on time. So, your best piece of advice to
Yes.
women entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Do you want me to read it or do you remember?
I don't remember what I said exactly in
So
the
you
wording.
said, and then you can expand on it. So you said, getting clear on what you're afraid of and why will open up all kinds of space to create what it is you want most in life. And then the other one was kindness matters more than you think in every interaction.
That's really good advice. I stand behind it.
I love that. Getting clear on what you're afraid of. Yeah, for sure.
We live in this over-memed world where it's like, just get clear on what you want and the rest will fall into place. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Fuck you. Thanks for that really like trope of information. Like that,
Yeah.
sure, that's how it works, but it is not that simple.
Yeah.
It's that easy, but it's not that simple. And so I think when you get clear on what it is you're afraid of, oh my God, it's so freeing because you can let that go. And then this beautiful vision of what you actually want to happen appears in your life.
I know, I hear you. And I feel like a really good practice for me, and I feel like I heard this first from Elizabeth Gilbert, where she talks about fear and she's like, is this fear a good fear or a bad fear? Is this a bad fear in the sense that like, I'm being told like, no, don't do this? Or is this a good fear of like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think of me if I actually do this? You know, but I really want to do it. But like, oh my gosh, what if I fail? You know, or if it's just, so that's really, really helped me in understanding, like moving to Australia, reaching out to people that I don't know, you know, like in all of my kind of smaller life decisions, it's really helped me. And then I do want to talk about the kindness matters more than you think. Like, I think that something that I'm trying to practice more and that just means so much to me is love. And like really trying to tap into that like heart center love space of like, what do I want to create? And what do I want people to feel? And what do I actually want to do? And then like, I feel like when I move from that space, that's where I feel like the most proud and the most inspired and the most like motivated, you know?
So I agree with you, and I am living my life in that way. And I really believe that every decision we make either comes from a place of fear or it comes from a place of love. And you know, if you think of even your interactions, like a basic one is the guy on the car insurance company who phones you when you're eating dinner. We are assholes to them, and it's like, why? We're protective of our energy, you know, like nothing stops you from being kind in that moment. When you know, that's really small scale, but even when you are dealing with the most difficult of people, even if they have an active role in your life, you do not have to be a dick. You absolutely can show up as a person who is endlessly kind and respectful. You don't have to be a doormat, but
Yeah.
you do have to be kind, because that is the way we
Yeah.
show up.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. I was riding a bike in Melbourne the other day. A car hit me. I'm fine. Everything's fine. But the way I reacted, I like look back on, and I'm sure it's like, the car, you hit me with your car. Like I could have died, you know? So like, I shouldn't be so hard on myself in my reaction, but it really made me reflect. Like I wasn't like crazy or anything. I was just very short with her and was just like, you're in the bike lane. Like what the hell, you know? But I just wish I would have sympathized a little bit more with her. Like if I were to hit a biker, like, oh my God, you know, I would have felt terrible. And for the biker to just be like, what the anyway. I'm sure she was so distraught the rest of the day. I was distraught the rest of the day because I almost died. But anyway, I hear you. And even if someone's like, oh, because I told someone later, like, I'm regretting the way that I was talking to her, and they were like, well, you were totally justified. Even if I was totally justified, it doesn't mean that that's how I want to be, you know? It doesn't mean that that's how I want to show up.
And I think the bottom line to that is because it doesn't serve anyone. Getting hit by a car is a pretty big deal, and it's a pretty big example because now like all of the chemicals are flooding and like
adrenaline. Yeah, it's crazy. I've totally had an adrenaline crash. Yeah.
The rational brain is not functional at that point, I don't think.
But yeah.
In most like day-to-day reactions, what are you fighting for?
Right.
Like, who wins by me being right in this argument? Nobody bloody wins. Like I feel great for a second until I deflate from that anger. I just feel over and over again. The kindness really matters. You know.
I know. I love how I bring up a really extreme example of like, oh, I feel so bad how I react after I got hit by a car. I mean, I can be a golden bitch on just like getting my mail messed up, you know. So it's not like it's not like, oh, I really struggled that day getting hit.
No, but it's a total state of mind thing. And it's like, what's your baseline, how you show up in human interactions? A lot of it comes from, I don't trust you and I think you're out to get me. So my defense is already up and I'm going to be a jerk to you. Not like, hey, I'm going to see how this goes. I'm going to be kind. Of course, I'm going to be wary, but mostly I'm going to be kind and trust that you are good and I am good. And this is a good exchange, right?
Going over the stuff that you wrote, and when for the feminist topic, you're like menstrual health, and then like immediately when I read that, like right now, I'm like, I like felt this whoosh of like, oh my gosh, did I just start my period?
Oh my God. Well, we can talk about that if you want.
We can definitely talk about it. I love talking about menstrual health.
It is actually, I'm not even joking, like it is a massive passion of mine.
Okay, well, let's talk about it for a second because I want to show you something.
Sure. Uh-oh.
So you know how when you're on Insta stories and they've started to have advertisers on there. Yeah. So there's this brand called Cottons, and they have this graph. I don't know if you can see it or read it.
Yeah.
So it says most women only bleed 75 milliliters of blood per period. Well, I've been using a Diva cup.
Yeah.
And I want to do a shout out to Dot Cup because I want to start their stuff.
Have you met her? Because she's a Chicago.
I know. Yeah. I haven't met her yet. She came like up on my radar after I left. But so those hold like 30 milliliters of blood. Yeah. I go through those like 3 on my first day, and taking my first day is really heavy, but that's like 60 milliliters just on my first day.
Yes, I think those stats are actually false because I think that they must be using like a concentrated blood measurement, because I think there's also so much liquid involved with like the shedding and passing.
Yeah.
Because there's no way.
There's no way. So what do you do? Tell me, what are your thoughts on your menstrual health?
So for, I don't know, I'm going to say probably 20 years until very, very recently, I bled for 3 weeks a month and had 1 week where I didn't bleed, and like insanely heavy, like insanely heavy periods.
So that's
And
endometriosis, right? Like that's not
it was nothing. It was, I talked to so many physicians. My parents are a doctor and a nurse, and nobody could assess what was wrong. It was always like, it's just bad luck. I got pregnant, no problem. So that was another mystery. I had twins, no problem. I delivered, no problem. People were like, this is just bad luck. And I wasn't really comfortable with that. So I went to start pursuing like natural treatments. And I was like, my body would override the pill when I was on the pill. And so I started talking to a naturopath, and even
your body would override the pill, as in like you would still have your period, you'd still be bleeding. Okay. I didn't know if it was like you were still fertile or something.
no, my body was like, nice try. Like,
Yeah.
anyway, so I was doing natural treatments, and the language or the theme started to come up that anytime you have a physical ailment, it tends to be rooted somewhere in your psyche, and it's like a physical manifestation of something that's wrong, right? And there was all this like, anything that has to do with the womb and the uterus, it could be traced back to an unhealed relationship with your mother, and there's like an issue with femininity. And I had a really traumatic childhood, and so I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested in this. Long story made very short, I healed so much stuff from my childhood. I have a fully normal period.
What?
So there is something to be said for how our body actually responds to stress, to pain, to trauma. I am somebody who had a lot of shame around my period for a long time, and raising 3 girls, I am adamant they don't have that shame. Because I'm somebody who had my period for 3 weeks out of 4 every month. I know very, very well that had I been born elsewhere in the world, I would have been not able to go to school.
Yeah.
And so menstrual health for me is like a holy shit issue because it's so deep in my experience.
So, okay. So just kind of saying back what I heard. So you're saying that like through therapy, you feel like there wasn't anything else, like, because you're saying like natural, like was there like things that you ate or like exercise, you know what I mean? It was just through therapy that you feel like is what regulated your period.
100%.
Wow.
I know. So think about that in terms of how any other illness or ailment manifests. Like where does that get traced back?
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think about this? Because I like had a neck injury, and I shouldn't even say injury. Like I woke up and like when your neck is sore. So my neck was like I couldn't turn it. And so I definitely like Googled like what is it? Like what's the emotional
Physics? Yeah.
But how do you feel about like people, because I like this conversation, and I can definitely see how it's helped me with like, all right, this is like a physical illness that I have. So just like the other side of it of like, what if, it's like the controversy around, you are bringing illness on yourself. You know what I mean? So how do you feel about that?
I don't know enough about that. Like I'm really into law of attraction stuff. I don't know how illness factors into it. And because I'm into law of attraction, I also don't think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, like I had a girlfriend who had breast cancer, and she would hear this kind of stuff, and she was just like, it can be really hurtful to people who are like, so you're saying that I gave myself cancer. You're saying that I can just think myself out of cancer, But I mean, like anything, I think that there's like a balance there, right? Of like, it's really fascinating.
Yeah. But as I say, like for me, I know this one experience for me.
Yeah, right.
I did all kinds of traditional treatments and nothing worked. And like I went back and healed that literal core wound that was so formative. And I'm not kidding, it gave like
Wow. Have you heard of following the moon cycle? And did you do anything around that?
100% yes, because this was part of my therapy, was to like pay more attention to lunar cycles. And what's really interesting, this is so timely, what's really interesting is that women typically, when we all live together and we all like followed the very natural rhythm of the day, tended to bleed at the same time, and it was very predictably charted by the lunar cycle.
Yeah.
When we all started to live indoors and have jobs in offices with artificial light, the lighting has messed with our cycles so much, okay, that where everybody's off course, and you throw a bunch of hormones on there and stress and all the rest of it, and it gets really crazy. So pin that. I was just talking to somebody the other day about a house in June, and I have this like amazing backyard, and there's a full garage and a shed that has a chicken coop, and somebody was like, so like, when are you getting chickens, girl? You know, I got all kinds of answers to that too, but they were saying that some of, like, they had a brother, I think, who had chickens. The chickens weren't laying very well, and they were like missing days of egg production. So they put some artificial lighting in, and bam, those chickens started producing eggs so much more regularly. And it's the same thing for women. Like, light and the quality of light that you're in actually affects your menstrual cycle.
Wow.
Isn't that whack?
That's so interesting. Yeah, the first time I heard about this lunar cycle thing was on this Being Boss podcast. You ever listen to Being Boss?
I don't listen to podcasts really.
You don't?
Because
That surprises me.
Isn't it? I need singular attention. So if I listen to a podcast, I need to like sit and like look at my phone. I can't listen to it while I'm driving.
Yeah, okay, I can see that, yeah. But they were interviewing this woman who's like a lunar cycle specialist. I can't remember what it's not cycle, but she's just like, she feels like every single night, like you should go outside and look at the moon and like have like the moonbeams come down on you, and how powerful that is. And it's interesting, I wanted to say this. I feel like the first time I connected with you was at camp. You came to camp last year, and I was like taking out the trash, and you were like walking out to your car, and we were both like in the parking lot, and I like looked up and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, when was the last time I saw the stars? And I had this like awe moment that quickly turned to anger of like, this is not right. That I never see the stars, I never see the moon. And you were just like there right in that moment, and you're like, I hear you, girl. And you're like, that's why I have this tattoo. And you like showed me your tattoo, and I'm like, you're perfect.
Whiskey involved with this conversation that preceded it for me.
What's that?
I wonder if there'd been any like whiskey involved, for example, that preceded it.
Oh, so good.
No, I feel that like I live in a small town here, and I go out and look at the moon every night because there's so much wonder and appreciation. Like when I look up, and I feel so comforted by that I've got whenever there's a new moon or a full moon, I've got like a new moon workbook that I work through, and it's very grounding and settling.
What's the workbook called?
It's from my friend in California who runs a company called Spirit Daughter. Okay. And she publishes two. So one for the new moon, one for the full moon. And it really does tap into the energy that is created by the planets. That's still pretty new to me, except for the fact that every time I'm like, gosh, for the entire month of March, I've been feeling X, Y, Z. Then I go to do the journal and I'm like, that's exactly what it said. I would be feeling. It is bananas spot on.
Okay,
definitely. It's a great way of like processing energy and emotions, and I don't know, making sense of it all.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I definitely need to get my hands on this, and this is exactly why I wanted to interview you, just because I'm like, I love you. I love all of the things that you have to say. Yes. Oh, Leisse, this is so good. Thank you so much. Seriously, I could talk to you all day long. I actually may email you afterwards about doing a motherhood blog post together. Yeah, a lot of fun. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, just that was amazing. Thank you for the opportunity just to be here, because that's a real pleasure for me.
Yeah, and let me know when you publish your book and I'll promote it.
Okay.
But